Good morning, everyone. Good morning. If you could please take your seats. I'm Rob Kaiser, publisher of Greater Wilmington Business Journal. Welcome to the first Power Breakfast of 2022. We have with us today the new leaders of three of our region's most important institutions. Before we get going, I have a couple announcements. First, the deadline to apply or nominate a business or nonprofit for the Coastal Entrepreneur Awards is Monday. The website to learn more and apply is in your program. It's coastalentrepreneur.com. Next, I'd like to recognize the sponsors that make the Power Breakfast series possible. Our presenting sponsors, who you'll hear from in a moment, are Green Resources and First National Bank. Our parking sponsor is Plantation Village. Our technology sponsor is Cloudwise. And our corporate sponsors are Bank of America, Cape Fear Community College, Cape Fear Realtors, Catapult, Cape Fear Solar Systems, Copiers Plus, Customers Bank, Cumulus Media, Duke Energy, ECS, the Michelle Clark Team, Miller Mott College, New Hanover County, Novant Health, Seaside Punch List, SEPI, UNCW, Wells Fargo, Wide Open Technologies, the Wilmington Chamber of Commerce, and Wilmington International Airport. Let's please have a round of applause for all of our sponsors. We'll first hear from our presenting sponsors, Gary Green with Green Resources, and then Spence Broadhurst with First National Bank. They will be followed by Business Journal editor Vicki Janowski, who will introduce our panel and moderate today's discussion. Gary?
Good morning. My name is Gary Green. I'm with Green Resources, a recruiting firm that helps you locate and land great talent. Almost 400 years ago, a shipload of travelers landed on the northeast coast of America. The first year they established a town site. The second year, they established a town government. The third year, the town government planned to build a road 5 miles westward into the wilderness. In the fourth year, the people tried to impeach the town government because they thought it was a waste of public funds to build a road 5 miles westward into a wilderness. Who needed to go there anyway? Here were a group of people who had the vision to see over 3,000 miles across an ocean, overcome great hardships to get there. But in just a few years, they were not even able to see 5 miles out of town. They had lost their pioneering vision. We are fortunate today to hear from three people who have certainly not lost their pioneering vision. Jeff Burke is director of Wilmington International Airport as of January 3rd. Jeff was selected certainly in part because of his extensive experience, but also because of the transformative initiatives he has led over the years to position airports for growth. He has also been a private pilot since he was 17. He was a certified aircraft rescue firefighter. His wife is a pilot. From Jeff's social media page, it is clear he is not exclusive to airplanes, however, traveling by RV, pontoon boat, perhaps a jet ski to pull the pontoon boat when it runs out of gas. And much like his pioneering travels, he is passionate about the pioneering opportunities at ILM. William Buster is CEO and president of the New Hanover Community Endowment as of yesterday, March 2nd. William has spent his entire career in philanthropy, sees philanthropy as a catalyst and convener for communities, and has dedicated his life's work to improving the social determinants of health and quality of life for all people. The endowment's mission is to improve the health, education, safety, and economic opportunity of every person in the New Hanover County community. To lead this type of mission certainly takes a pioneering vision, and William has that. Shelburne Stevens is president of Novant Health, New Hanover Regional Medical Center, and Novant Health's Coastal Market as of last May. Shelburne likely developed his passion for healthcare when he was young and helping his grandmother care for his grandfather who was bedridden. Shelburne began his career with Novant Health 32 years ago, back in 1990, as a respiratory care assistant and then respiratory therapist. He earned his bachelor's degree and his MBA while working full-time. He is always one to jump in there and understand what's happening at the bedside. He's always one to keep an open door, always one ready with a plan B, and most of the times a plan C. And when you visit the hospital, you may even catch him sharing a musical tune for everyone at the piano. Shelburne not only has a pioneering vision, he uncovers, supports, and celebrates the pioneering visions of those around him. 3 new leaders bringing new directions for this community. At Green Resources, we would love to pioneer your recruiting strategies. Our vision is to connect people and companies in such a way so that jobs become purposeful, impactful, and long-term careers. It's more than just filling a position. It's about finding that one innovator, visionary, pioneer who will make a lasting difference on your company's team and culture while feeling accomplished through their work. At Green Resources, we're ready to help take your company wherever it is you want to go.
Good morning. The first thing I'll say is, Rob, why do I always have to follow Gary? I mean, he has that classic presentation voice, and he's always organized, and he ties things together so well, and I get up here and ramble on by whatever's on my mind, and I apologize for that, and he always makes me look silly like I am, but it is an honor to be here, and I'm going to say, I'm looking out there, and a lot of you going, weren't you just up on that stage last meeting? How did you get up there again? And I'll tell you, there's a couple ways. If you work hard and you get the privilege of being involved in something as significant as the New Hanover Community Endowment, that you get a chance to sit on the stage in December. But the other way is just to buy your way up here, and that's what I did today. I did that, and Rob will be standing up here taking checks. If anybody else wants to do it, he'll take checks later on. But it is great to be here, and it's great to hear Gary talk about vision, because at First National Bank, that's exactly what we believe in. We believe in vision to help our clients achieve their financial success and their goals, and we show it through different strategies, through our clicks to bricks retail strategy, where we truly marry innovative technology with that one-on-one human approach that we will never walk away from. And also it shows we have our Physicians First program, where we are helping young physicians and veterinarians and others retire student debt that can be very burdensome in a very meaningful way, in a very early and meaningful way. And there are other things that we're doing, and we're also committed to this community, and we have been through some of the work we've done, and we're just privileged to be here in that way. And I'd also like to welcome a guest that we have at our table, some of the board members from the New Hanover Community Endowment who have joined us in supporting William and the other speakers. Thank you all for being here with us. And when you're speaking of vision, if you look at modern Wilmington, modern day Wilmington, you look back 60 years ago, where it was really built on vision, and more importantly, it was built on visionary leadership. And that's another step beyond vision, because without that leadership to implement the vision dies. And if you look back, 60 years ago, with Dan Cameron and Bob Warwick and what was then the Committee of 100, Wilmington Business Development, who just repurposed or redirected the trajectory of the business community here by recruiting Corning and GE and other companies. And you fast forward into the 70s and 80s with the leadership of Gene Merritt and others to take quite frankly, a dying downtown and redevelop it into what you see now as the vibrant downtown that we all live in, that we'll all see and live. And also, if you look back 15 years ago to the Vision 2020, and 2020's past us now, but the Vision 2020 plan that really envisioned a vibrant northern riverfront with a river walk and a convention center and what's now the Riverfront Park and Live Oak Pavilion and the hundreds and hundreds of residences that are down here in a marina on sites that at the time were underdeveloped, undeveloped, and quite frankly contaminated, and see that those visionary leaders take that step and implement it. Well, today it's time for new vision and new leadership and new visionary leadership, and we're excited to have these three gentlemen join us today to show what we're going to do and what they're going to do through their leadership at the airport and Novant Health, New Hanover Regional Medical Center, and one that's got a special place in my heart, William Buster at the New Hanover Community Endowment. So again, thank you for allowing us to be a part of this, and we hope that you're going to enjoy the presentation from our three new visionary leaders. Thank you.
Thanks, Spence. Hi, everyone. I'm Vicki Janowski. I'm the editor of the Greater Wilmington Business Journal, and thank you, everyone, for coming out this morning and hearing from some of our newest leaders in town, or in the case of Shelburne, in our newest titled in town. We'll get to that in a minute. And like Spence, I would also want to thank Gary for being so well organized as well in his remarks. It means I never have to look up anyone's bios, and we get that out of the way straight ahead. I think I've been interviewing Shelburne for over a decade in his role at Brunswick Medical Center, and Gary found out details I had never even heard of, so you guys should be concerned if he's doing a deep dive on you. So for this Power Breakfast today, we are talking about new leaders and new directions. We're getting a chance to talk with some of the heads of some of the largest institutions in town. And so we're going to do just a slightly different format than when we have our Power Breakfast and we have a panel discussion around a certain topic. Today we really wanted to give you all the opportunity to get to know our panelists and our new leaders a little bit more in depth about their background, but also updates on the projects for their institutions and what they have on their slates for this year. So to kick things off, though, just so we can get to know each other a little bit better, I did want to start off with a question for all three of you and ask, what made you want to take this job? Why here in Wilmington? And Jeff, you get to start us off on that.
Oh, great. Well, I think much like all of the people that are relocating to Wilmington, Wilmington's been in the top relocation across, for the last 5 years and ranking in the top inbound moves. And I think we're moved here for much of the same reasons: the work-play atmosphere, the thriving downtown, the beaches, the great climate, much better climate than we were used to. So, that is the primary reason, but also the excitement at the airport and all the activity and great opportunities that we have there for growth and to impact this community from an economic impact standpoint.
And William, and Gary alluded to this as well, but this is, I think, day 3 of William being in Wilmington. So we definitely appreciate you making time out for your morning to come stop in here while you're unpacking boxes. But what made you want to take this position?
Not just unpacking boxes. All my clothes are still in my car, so. So I've been in philanthropy for a long time, and so I'll give you a little secret about philanthropy. It's connected all across this country. And when the conversations began about the opportunity for the endowment, all of us across the country were watching Wilmington. And so the opportunity to lead an organization that was going to be transformative. There's nothing else, just to let you know, there's nothing else in this country like the New Hanover Community Endowment as far as philanthropy. And so it was one of those things like, of course you apply for that if you're in this field. And so I was watching what was happening here and threw my hat in the ring, not knowing whether or not I'd even get a conversation. But the opportunity to really be transformative, improve lives is something that I love to do. But to be able to do it in a place-based fashion, like we'll be able to know from our investments whether or not we've been successful over the next few years. And so the opportunity to make those changes was really the driving force for me to come here.
And Shelburne, you're a little bit of a different case, as I alluded to earlier. You have actually been here for a very long time. Your longtime presence in Brunswick Medical Center, which has been owned by Novant Health. But with the sale of the hospital and the health system to Novant Health, you took on the role as head of Novant Health, NHRMC, and also the coastal market for Novant that was formed as part of the sale. So your question is a little bit different in that not why did you want to move to Wilmington, but why would you want to take this job?
So most of you know Carl Armato when Carl calls no is not in the conversation. So that was the first part. But I was excited. I've worked with the team at New Hanover in my time at Brunswick Medical Center. They were the tertiary hospital that we were referring to. So to be able to bring them into Novant Health and help them understand and bring these cultures together, that really is what excited me about this opportunity coming into this role. And it was a great team at New Hanover. They were very welcoming to me. And doing this in a pandemic at the same time, we've really accomplished a lot in this first year together, and it's really been hard work, but it's been fun and enjoyable at the same time.
Okay, so now that you know who you're speaking with today, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into each of these projects, but just want to send a note out to you. We will have time at the end for audience questions, so if you have a question and want to text it in, that number, which is also in your program, is 910-264-8955, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can before we have to depart. So Jeff, starting with you, tell us a little bit just about your background. You're coming to Wilmington from Branson, Missouri, where you were executive director of Branson Airport there, which I think is just kind of an interesting, kind of a unique airport situation there. Maybe you can spend just a minute to fill us in, because not only was it a newly built airport, which is very unusual, this time, that large of an infrastructure project in our country, but also privately financed, which is different than how most airports operate. So I'm kind of curious about what experiences you took from that model and that situation that you're bringing into your role here as head of the Wilmington Airport.
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, I've been in aviation my whole life. I grew up in an aviation family, got my pilot's license in high school, when I turned 17, and I just learned that we have that in common with his son, who's getting his pilot's license currently. So once you get it in your blood, it sticks with you forever. So I went on to college, aviation management, and I've been at 4 airports over the last 27 years, varying sizes, some similar in size to Wilmington, a little bit bigger, commercial service airports. I was in a leadership role at all these airports, and one of the largest general aviation airports in the country as well. And the last airport I was at was certainly unique in the sense that it was private. It was a public-private partnership and financed. I moved there to build the airport, really, and it was a $160 million construction project. I thought I was going to be there for 24 months through the construction phase and move on. I ended up there for 14 years, and because the team was great and the work was unique. But I think the part where some of that will transition to this role here is we've got a great board of leaders who are working really hard to develop the business park, and I think a lot of those aspects of the financing elements that I worked on there will apply very well to helping our board and our community grow the business park with our team here.
And so speaking of construction then, since you're talking about that, you're coming in while the airport in Wilmington is obviously having a transformative construction project as well, which coincidentally you will see on the front page of your business journal there on your tables. But if you have not had a chance to read it, Jeff, since you're here, can you give us an update on where the terminal expansion stands and then what's the next step in that?
Yeah, well, again, the team here did a great job getting that project financed and funded, the board and the staff. So I got to come in and help host a party for the grand opening, really, was my first job. And that was a lot of fun. So that project in all is about halfway complete. I don't have the phasing plans down like Grancer does, but it's about halfway done. And the new concourse is the exciting part. The restaurant and bars inside, past security, are all in the process of being open now, which means then we'll convert over to the other side, remodel the old side of the terminal, fix up the TSA checkpoints and expand baggage claim, and that will all come online by next spring. So in spring of 23, this airport is really well positioned for future growth in 23 and 24, and I think the opportunities for that are really endless.
So can you speak a little bit more about what that growth, what the expectations are there? So is it, how specific do you guys get into goals in terms of additional carriers or additional routes or additional cities, which is always one of the most popular questions that comes up with businesses here?
Well, air service development is economic development, first of all. For every new flight that comes in on an annual basis, it generates about $35 million in economic impact to our area. It creates about 90 jobs. That's one year-round flight on average generates that impact for this community. And so we're going to be working really hard. That's really what our whole team has been working on in the last 8 weeks is inventorying what we have, working with our public and private sector stakeholders around the community. I know I've met with a lot of you. We're pulling in and looking at new data, mobilytic data, and things to really try to go and sell this community, not only to American United and Delta that are there now, which, by the way, have added Boston, Chicago, and Newark recently, and they've also expanded and upgauged their fleets for the summer. So we have more seats in the market in Wilmington than pre-pandemic, and that's not seen around the country. On average, the domestic market's still down 20% from pre-pandemic levels. That doesn't look like that's going to be the case in Wilmington going forward, so we're really excited I'm really excited, and so is the whole team and our board, about where this airport's heading.
Yeah, so how is the travel trend going now, either just locally here, what you guys talk about in the industry? Do people feel like it's going to fully recover at some point, or is that still sensitive to what happens with another spike in the next variant?
Well, I think the industry's really changed, and maybe for the long term. I mean, you think of Zoom now and Teams and and how our business travel trends are changing. But one of the most exciting things is Wilmington is such a hot spot for inbound moves, and also the second home market from up and down the East Coast, and the number of population that has second homes here. The friends and family travel, leisure travel, and of course the business travel that Wilmington's always been great for will continue. But that's also part of the reason why Wilmington International Airport hasn't had the same level of impacts as many of our peers across the country.
Another detail about the Branson Airport that you're coming from is that it's served by the low-cost carrier Frontier Airlines. And low-cost carrier is something that's been talked about for years, about the possibility for Wilmington, and differing opinions about whether the market could bear a low-cost carrier, whether we're too close to RDU and Myrtle Beach for it. Since you've spent so many years working with a carrier in that sphere, like, what is your thoughts on whether that's in the cards for Wilmington?
Yeah, for sure, it is. And I can't sit up here today and tell you, I get asked all the time, when's Southwest coming? Why don't you call them and tell them to start flying to Wilmington, So, it doesn't work that way, but, there is room for low-cost service in this market. And, air service development's a marathon, not a sprint. It's a long-term effort. And that effort started before I got here, and it will continue. But I think definitely there will be room for that, and we'll see that in the future for this market.
And you briefly touched on the business park, part of the property of the airport. What's the latest on that development?
Well, the business park in '21 had a great year, thanks to our board chair, Donna, and team out there at the airport. 70 acres of new land leases in '21. I think the whole business park is about 150 acres. So there's still room for growth, but there's also been a lot of commitments in the last 12 months. And based on some internal conversations, it looks like there could be a lot of some additional great things to come. But I'm certainly not going to announce that here.
You're welcome to. It's a Power Breakfast tradition. So again, I know, and the caveat here is, especially for you and William, I understand that you're fairly new in your roles and still getting the lay of the land. So I understand if this has not been part of the discussion yet, but I am curious, in the Garner report, or when we see other airports in North Carolina like Triad that's gone after specific aerospace industries or targeted specific for the business park developments and for those suppliers, is there discussions about in Wilmington going after a targeted niche like that, or just in general developing the business park?
Well, the short answer is a lot of the new announcements that have occurred out there have been warehousing and storage facilities. I think that's definitely a target. Specifically, there's elements of the airfield that would be great for the aerospace industry, manufacturing, MRO facilities. And all of those things are on the table for the future. In fact, we'll be updating and reviewing our overall business model for that aspect of the airport and over the course of the next 6 months, and targeting those site selectors that make the most sense for the business park over the course of the next several years.
Is there an advantage to leverage there because of the port tie-in with the warehousing and logistics?
Yeah, definitely. And just the aspect that it's got the free trade zone capabilities, the rail, great highway access, all that right there makes the aspects of that business park unique.
Okay. Before we move on to William, can I ask, what are your priorities this year? What are your biggest goals for you, Jeff?
Oh, me? Oh. Well, certainly air service development's right there at the top of the list. I mean, I know that's something that the community is all very excited about. You know, and keep in mind too, air service development includes our existing carriers as well as bringing in other low-cost carriers. But American, as our largest carrier there, has served this market great for a long time, and we can't take our eye off of that. They're serving almost every hub out of our market that they can. There's one missing, and I'll let you all guess what that is. And we're certainly talking to them about that. You know, United is a good carrier in our market, relatively new carrier, and then Delta's been there for a long time, serving Atlanta and New York. And you know, I think it's very important to note our market, for our size, has 9 nonstops. We connect to 360 markets across the globe with one stop, and that's an incredible level of service for a community this size. There's room for more, though. So air service development. Growing the business park is certainly up there at the top of the list as well, and because that helps air service development, because the more money the airport can make on the business park, the lower the rates can be for the airlines, and that's a good thing. That helps with bringing in and attracting low-cost carriers. And then the last is to take care of and grow our general aviation community at the airport. You know, my wife and I are both pilots. We love aviation, and that's a part of aviation that is important too for this community.
Okay, thank you. And William Buster, as we mentioned earlier, CEO and president of the New Hanover Community Endowment. I feel like everyone in this room probably knows what the endowment is. William's probably now the most popular newcomer in Wilmington.
Got a lot of money.
Who still has clothes in his car, but you will, I'm sure, get to know him soon. But just as a refresher, the endowment is what the community received from the bulk of the proceeds when New Hanover Regional, which was a county-owned hospital, was sold to Novant Health. So roughly, you know, 1.3 billion, give or take some millions of change, has been put into an endowment that is outlined to be a long-term fund for the community for areas such as public safety, education, things we've all covered before. But, you know, the bulk of the work, and you all have known since we've talked about this at the December Power Breakfast as well, is setting up the details for that and how that's going to work and how people are going to request tapping into that said fund. So this is the man that is going to be in charge of all that, William Buster. Welcome to Wilmington. Let's also, just like we talked about with Jeff, tell us a little bit about your background and where you're coming from. You moved here from your role at the Dogwood Health Trust in Asheville, which is another hospital sale-based endowment that has similarities and differences to the situation here, but something that came up many times during the discussion around the sale of NHRMC. So tell us a little bit what your role was there, and then maybe how it is similar and different.
Well, my career has been in philanthropy. I started with the Mary Reynolds Babcock Foundation based in Winston-Salem all the way back in 2000. And so there I worked across the Southeast, and my career has been focused in really on community development, economic development, rural development, very important to me, and then youth development. And so working in philanthropy, figuring out how do you take the resources and improve those conditions in those areas has been something that I've been trying to learn how to do all these years. And so I went from the Babcock Foundation to the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, and I ran their rural development work across the country and learned a lot of, that's when I really got a chance to kind of see all the rest of the country. And then after Kellogg, went to the St. David's Foundation based in Austin, a health foundation. That's really, really went deep into a community-based approach, and then was recruited to come back home from Austin to North Carolina and went to the Dogwood Trust. And at the Dogwood Trust, my role was to actually come in and turn them around a little bit. And so they'd had a couple little missteps. They brand new. But my role was to come in and create all the strategies that they were going to deploy in the community. I think that's the one similarity between what I did there and what I'm coming to do here, is that I'm coming here is to help create the strategies that we're going to implement to improve the lives of the residents here in this community. I think what's important to know about the field of philanthropy is that I view it as a catalyst. I view it as a partner. We don't create the change. We support the folks that create the change. And so I think if there's anything that that's been consistent in my career, is trying to help people understand that I'm just here to help, and we're going to hopefully try to unleash the potential of all the folks in this room and folks that you know outside of this room.
And so then what, from all that experience and then your most recent one with Dogwood, what takeaways or what do you bring into the role with you here?
So the one thing I learned in Nashville is that you got to listen. The success that we had there was really developing a continual process of how people were able to kind of share information, ask questions, have one-on-ones, have kind of group conversations. And so coming here, that is going to be the thing that I'm going to be spending most of my time doing while I actually create the organization itself. But one of the things that I'm going to be spending the most time doing over the next several months is probably having one-on-one conversations with many of you in this room and your friends. And so we'll be doing that in ones and in twos and in tens, and really trying to get a sense of what's happening. Because it's one thing to read the data. You know, that's the one thing I was able to do, is learn about what's happening with the school systems, public safety, the housing thing. Now y'all talk a lot about housing down here, but I don't really know what that means yet. What are we going to do about education? What are we going to do about housing? That's the conversations that I'm going to begin to have as I try to get the clothes out of my car.
And you mentioned this in your intro, first question, about the New Hanover Community Endowment being unique nationally, this model and this amount. So what is coming into this role, what do you think is going to be just kind of new or different than what you've seen in your career or have to figure out?
There's so much excitement about the opportunity, and people talk about the $1.29 billion. All right. But I think what's going to be most important is helping people understand that patience is going to be needed here. The problems that we're facing lasted, some of them are decades old, some of them are centuries old. And so you don't change those problems in 5 years. You don't change them in 10 years. You change them over a generation. And so I'm here, this is where I'm coming to bring my family, and this is where I'm going to be. And hopefully this is where I'll be able to end my career. And so having the opportunity to help folks understand that this truly is a marathon. And not only is that it's a marathon that I will be running, it's a marathon that I'm going to be asking you all to run with me. So that's the most important part, is that we're going to need patience to change these issues that we've been facing.
So I know first up is setting up shop, setting up your office, getting an email address that everyone will be, I'm sure, emailing you on. So how large do you see this staff being or the office being, or especially in year one, what do you see happening just organizationally for you?
Yeah, that was funny you mentioned about the email. I really don't have an email address, and my personal email has gotten out there, y'all. So stop emailing my Gmail account. That's been crazy. It's for an endowment this size. We can think about the things that I'll do. So I'll take the approach from the things that we'll be tackling. And so all of our focus areas, from public safety to education, to economic development, community development, we're going to be hiring staff that are going to be experts in those areas and deploying those resources. So in an endowment this size, you're going to have at least one person in each of those areas, probably more than one person in each of those areas, and then the support staff that go behind that, all the folks that manage the grant management program, and the folks who actually are managing our financial resources, and then the folks who are actually helping to run the office. I can envision our organization being anywhere from 15 to 25 people over the years. Now, there's literally 2 of us right now, and so I'll be looking for some support over the next several months.
And then on the grant receiving side, which I know in previous discussions, we said loosely, they have aimed for the end of this year. And I've asked this question before with Spence and Hannah, the co-chairs, but I'm curious what your thoughts are coming from this field. How do people, what are the best practices for quantifying those types of requests? What's your philosophy in terms of when you have a fire hose of grant applications that will likely come in? Yeah. What is the best way to objectively weigh those and impact?
The first thing we have to do is gain clarity about what it is that we're actually trying to change as an organization. And so we'll be going through a process with the board of really refining those areas of interest. Because right now, if you were to ask me, what are you going to do about primary education and secondary education, I would tell you, make it better. But other than that, we don't have any strategies. So the first thing we have to do is to be able to kind of create the ways in which we can help people understand what we're trying to change. Because at this point, I've said this to the board members, we don't have a rationale to say yes or no at this point. And so over the next several months, we'll be establishing that. And so having people understand what it is that we're trying to do, so when they ask us questions, we can answer questions and guide them down the path. One of the things that I think is going to be important as folks begin to kind of engage us is really view us as a partner, create a relationship with us, create a relationship with the team that's going to be here. And it may not be the first time you get an opportunity, but if you work with the team and you work with the folks that we'll have on our staff, we'll figure out ways in which we're going to be partnering. Because I believe ultimately if you are in those areas, we'll find a way to support and be a partner. But we first have to understand what it is that we're actually trying to change as an organization.
With your experience, either at Dogwood or other philanthropic groups or organizations like that, have you seen success in terms of where sectors come together or groups come together in terms of the requests? So we meant affordable housing comes up a lot here. Is it common for all the different agencies and nonprofits working in that space to build requests together, or is it still kind of individual?
You want my desired?
Sure, tell us what you want to see here. I'm sure people are taking notes.
A wise person in philanthropy used to say that the most uncommon act is to get nonprofits to work together. However, that is actually what we need most. And so the best, when I've seen philanthropy at its best and organizations at its best, is when you recognize that no one organization can solve a problem. There has to be intentional collaboration. Now, what philanthropy should be good at doing is creating the pathway for those organizations to work together, because it's not natural. Like each organization has its own board, has its own staff, has its own vision. What we should be doing as philanthropy is figuring out how do you support those organizations to have those conversations so they can go down the path naturally. There's nothing worse than creating, having shotgun weddings as a philanthropy. And so you're not going to have us telling us, we're not going to be telling you to work with any particular organization. We're going to be creating the opportunities for folks to have the natural conversations. What I will say to you is that we will stress is that I will tell you not one organization in this room can create the change that we're going to try to do. And so at least, if you know that that's what I'm going to start with, hopefully folks will be able to kind of have the conversations with the folks, because you already know each other. If you're doing work in education, you know the other folks doing the work in education. If you're doing work around youth development, you know who's doing work around youth development. So those conversations can begin, but you do need resources to work together. So that's one of the things that we hope to kind of bring to the table.
So in your field over the years and just observing how communities approach this, to throw anyone under the bus, but what are some missteps that you have either heard about or seen firsthand that communities might do when faced with this kind of opportunity?
Now this is going to sound real strange, right? One of the worst things that I've ever seen is too many resources going too fast to a small area. it's like flooding the engine. If you're not used to deploying the level of resources that we're going to be deploying, it can do more harm than good. And you get one chance to start. And so what I've seen across the country is when foundations have said they're going to create the change and they flood a community with resources, the nonprofits are not ready, the community is not ready. And so we're going to try our best to be patient and ask for patience as we figure out the best way to support the organizations at the appropriate levels, because that's another thing. You know, if you are a nonprofit and your annual budget has been $100,000, it doesn't make much sense to ask for $1 million grant. And that's, you know, we're going to be helping folks kind of figure out what's the right proportion of the size of grants that you'll be asking for the size of the organization. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't get to that point as an organization, but my hope is that we help build the capacity. That'll be a key component of the work that we'll be doing, is actually how do we support the capacity building of the nonprofits, because a saying that I always say, you can't win the race without the right horses, and the nonprofits are going to be the engines. We need for them to be strong and healthy, and so we'll be deploying resources just around capacity building, so we can get organizations ready for the more resources that we'll be deploying as the years go on.
And just like I asked Jeff, and you've alluded to some of this, what are some of your top priorities for this year then?
So I have a board meeting tonight, so I'll be telling the board what I'm going to be doing. So I'll start, Spence, I'll start with this. I need a staff, so that's the first thing we'll be doing. We'll be hiring staff, specifically the internal staff, so the folks who are going to help us stand up the organization. We need an infrastructure, so we'll be focused on looking for the staff that are going to help us stand up the organization. The next important thing is supporting the outreach programs, and so we're going to be. You all know that we're developing a community advisory council. We'll be spending a lot of time over the next several weeks actually getting ready to launch that, so we can begin to kind of get more intentional information in from the community and to help inform us what we'll be doing. And then the next thing, which is probably going to be the most important and the hardest part, will be putting into action our values. How do we turn our values into operational goals? How do we turn our desires and our buckets of work into strategies? And doing that work with the board, and then ultimately with the staff, and then with the inclusion of the community input is going to be the next body of work. And so I can envision between now and December several conversations that we'll be having in that space. My hope is by this time next year, we're absolutely clear about the strategies, and we'll be deploying the resources along those strategies.
Okay, great. And Shelburne Stevens, like I mentioned earlier, has been before last year head of Brunswick Medical Center, and then moved into the position as president of Novant Health NHRMC, as well as president of Novant Health's Coastal Market. So Shelburne now is basically in charge of the largest employer, 8,000 or so employees here. Our main, the largest healthcare provider of our area. I believe this is probably an old figure, 11 to 13% of our economy, but if you know that's wrong, a sizable chunk of our local economy, and a major reason why people look at about whether or not to move here when they come in. So no pressure, but how's the job been going 1 year in?
It's been going great outside of a pandemic and the waves that come with that. The team has been very engaged, been very welcoming, as I said earlier. We're really just focusing now on the Legacy New Hanover strategic plan that they had, plus the strategic plan that I had at Brunswick, putting all that together and really looking at the population growth and how do we meet those demands and needs. In the communities where is healthcare not being delivered, where is there a little too much healthcare delivered. Folks don't like always coming to 17th Street. It's very crowded, it's big. So that was the reason that we're building Scotts Hill Medical Center, and we're working fast and furious on that. We hope to have that open by the end of 2024 to serve that very fast-paced growing community up there. And then we're also looking at medical office buildings. Where do we need more primary care providers with folks moving here, and specialists? It's a big need. So Wilmington is a great place to come live, and we've just got to keep working on that to get those folks here. The other big piece of the puzzle is the workforce. COVID really impacted our workforce. A lot of nurses, doctors, respiratory therapists, pharmacists, they all left the field. They had enough, they retired. People going in thinking that they wanted to go into healthcare, now rethinking that. So we've got to have those conversations to get them into healthcare and fill that demand. We're all fighting for the same nurses and doctors and staff to staff our hospitals. And we got to work with our community colleges, UNCW, of how do we grow those schools and those programs. We might be talking to you some about how do we get some underserved students into those programs, because some of the colleges graduate between 40 and 46 nurses a year. I need them to put a 0 on the end of that number to meet our demand going forward. So it's really a big struggle.
And I do want to definitely talk about the workforce question, because that seems to be a real serious issue nationally as well as locally. But you mentioned a couple of those capital expansion projects, such as Scotts Hill and the Neuro Center. Where does that stand now?
The Neuro Tower, it'll be completed later this fall. Lori, keep me honest here, she's leading that. And that was impacted several times with Florence, with some damage there, but that should open fully. Part of it's open now. It'll be open completely this fall around September.
So does the opening of that include bringing new specialties in neuro to the market that wasn't here before? Or is that just consolidating services or specialists that were?
Well, we're always looking for new specialties to come into the market, but we have some great specialists under the Neurosciences Institute already. So it's just giving them the space to continue to do that great work. And we really want to continue to be not only the regional referral center, but we want to can grow that so we can serve more counties.
And you mentioned the coastal market. I mentioned that as part of your title. That's not something that we've talked about probably as much as we have just the general transition from NHRMC to Novant NHRMC. So can you explain a little bit more about what is the coastal market? How far does that encompass, and what's the plan with that?
So today we would call it an 8-county surrounding area, but we don't put boundaries on that. We may grow south and we may grow north just to meet the needs of those communities going forward.
Is it different than the geographic area that NHRMC traditionally had with the?
No, it's continuing to expand that.
Is there additional coordination of services then, or extra tie-in from Novant Health, like corporate having a presence here with it?
Yeah, so we just opened the Wilmington corporate headquarters up in the Iron Gate facility a couple of weeks ago. And then really it's just connecting all the pieces together. In the past, when I was at Brunswick and we were working with New Hanover and I wanted one of their specialists to come down, we had to get, no offense to the attorneys, had to get a lot of attorneys involved with agreements, and it took us a long time. Christy Spivey's here, she and I had painful conversations around that. So now it's easy. We can just talk with our specialists and they see the need, and we can get them down to other counties, especially Brunswick, with that past growth there.
And how has the integration gone in terms of, not the overall integration, but just in terms of working with Brunswick and NHRMC? I know when you were president of Brunswick Medical Center, I feel like you and John Gizdick had started having some joint projects and communication, such as the Violink sharing. But historically, that had been a lot more separated, I should say, than it had been in recent years before the sale. So what's it been like now in terms of crossing county lines as
really,
one banner?
We've spent this first year just looking at the strategies and seeing where the gaps in services are. We now have a critical care transport truck at Brunswick now full-time. So, and again, looking at specialists, how can we bring more specialists down to Brunswick Medical Center? We just broke ground last week on a new medical office building where we can expand services, expand their cardiac rehab. So we'll continue to see more projects like that come up over the next coming years.
Are there any other capital projects or building projects you guys have coming up in the pipeline next besides the major one at Scotts Hill?
The Scotts Hill is the major one, and then right behind that is the $10 million donation from the Michael Jordan family to build those 2 clinics here in Wilmington. And so we're really excited to get going on those this summer and get those open soon to serve those communities where they don't have access to health care. But that's going to be exciting the day we get to cut the ribbon and open those clinics.
And have you all decided on the sites for both clinics now?
We have one. Phil, keep me honest, I don't know that we have the second one finalized, do we? Soon.
Can't get anyone to spill any beans up here today. How about just overall integration then, in terms of culture then? So it's been about a year and a month now. What's been, from the workers, employee standpoint, how's the integration of those two cultures been?
It's been good. I mean, getting to know the team, and again, it's difficult in a pandemic. Healthcare has become very competitive, so we've had to invest a lot into our team members, into their base salaries and some of those things. Just last year alone, we invested $36 million in team member salaries to bring them up to market rate so that we can be competitive in that healthcare marketplace. And we'll continue to do so. Healthcare is very volatile right now, and we're going to continue to invest in those team members.
And then how about the same thing from the patient care standpoint? What's the feedback been there in terms of the transition?
It's been good. We get a lot of positive letters each and every day. I mean, folks are happy now they can come visit their loved ones, and that we've opened up the doors a little bit and getting back to a little bit more normalcy. But it's just been volume. We've all been overwhelmed with the volume of patients, and not all of that has been COVID. People put off health care for a year. Their health has declined, so they're needing more attention. So it's just managing that.
And then one issue that came up quite a lot in the discussions leading up to looking at the future of the hospital and then what would happen next was the issue of whether, an acquisition, what that would do to just general healthcare costs in general for the market and for the patients. Is there a way to tell how, or if that's been impacted, how, long do you wait to see, or how many years do you have to wait to see if there's been a long-term change on that?
Well, it's a bit too early to tell if there's been an impact to cost. We don't think that there has been, but it's a little bit earlier. But day one, the biggest change was the charity care policy. New Hanover's policy was 200% of the federal poverty level. Novant Health was 300%. To put that in perspective, if a family of 4 does not have access to insurance and the household income is less than $83,000 a year, they do not receive a bill from Novant Health. It is written off.
And I also wanted to talk about community. I wanted to ask you about community involvement, and I might know what you're going to say, especially since we're coming off the weekend of the Novant Health Wilmington Marathon. But sometimes when you have a local institution headquartered here, obviously there's a lot of community ties, board service, board presidencies, chamber involvement, all the things that are locally sponsored. And then when the parent company is not in your market, those can impact how that relationship is with the company. So I wanted to ask you when you guys talk about Novant's presence and community involvement here, what do you see them? What do you see Novant continuing to be involved here locally?
All the above.
Yeah.
We don't see any impact with that, and we treat it differently by each region. And there's a team here in the market that we look at all the sponsorships and where we're going and what additional things can we participate in. Some of it may not be sponsorship, some of it may be health screenings now that we can get back out, but we want to be present in the community. We're purchasing a mobile unit right now to help us provide screenings and possible clinics in some of those underserved areas. Just like every other vehicle, it's going to take us a while. That's on order. But really, you should see us present in a lot of things here in the entire region.
Okay, and let's talk about some of those industry issues that we were talking about earlier before we ran out of time. Well, one, the COVID pandemic impacts. I guess first off, what are you seeing currently in the hospital in terms of the latest variant spike? Have things...
Fortunately, it's going down. We're very pleased with that. I think this is our new norm. We're going to have some COVID that's going to be over here, and we've learned in 2 years how to move forward, living in a world with COVID in it, and that's kind of our new norm, I would call it. But now we've got to focus on all those folks who still need access to health care. That's the main focus.
Very early on in the pandemic, it was very obviously disruptive to non-COVID related procedures, elective surgeries, which was also very disruptive to just revenue in general for the health system. Has over the 2 years, and like you said, as it becomes part of the new norm, has the health system figured out better how to respond to that?
Yes. I think we all can say that. We had a little bit of a slowdown this past winter with this surge, nothing like in the past where we just had to stop procedures. But again, we've learned how we can live in this world with COVID around us and continue to provide health care.
But one of those lingering impacts was something that you talked about earlier, and that's on the workforce itself in terms of maybe people leaving the market or not being as interested in feeding the pipeline. And before the pandemic, we were already talking about a shortage in healthcare of primary care physicians, of nurses. So this really seemed to exacerbate it. And there's some scary stories like nationally in terms of what this might mean for all of us in our healthcare long term. So I'm kind of curious what your thoughts and opinions are about how do you address that? What are solutions for that? How do we not have a crisis of providers down the road?
So really, like I said earlier, it's working with community colleges. It's getting into the middle schools early, start educating students about the healthcare industry, what options there are, whether it's medical school, nursing school, going to be a pharmacy tech, and really helping them find that passion around healthcare. It's going to take us several years to get out of this deficit. It's a huge deficit right now. Prior to the pandemic, there was a national shortage of about 1 million nurses, and that went to over 2 million with COVID. And we feel the effects of that. It's a competitive market right now, but we feel if we can stay competitive in our salaries, and Wilmington is a great place to come and live, that we're going to be able to get ahead of that in a few years.
How much of a strain is it causing locally right now?
Well, we have travelers. That's been what we've been reaching to, and all the facilities have done that. We have several hundred travelers in various jobs in the hospitals right now.
Okay. And before we kick it off for audience questions, same thing for you, Shelburne, to wrap up this portion of our talk. What are your main priorities for this year?
Really focusing on that strategic plan and planning our capital projects going forward. Number one, get these Michael Jordan clinics under construction and get them going, get Scotts Hill going, and then really looking at our master facility plan at all of our hospitals and seeing where there's gaps in services and making that next 10-year plan.
Okay, great. Thank you all for just sharing us a little bit about your insights. So again, if you have a question for one of our panelists, you can text it into this number, 910-264-8955. When you text, go ahead and put your name and your table number, and we'll get a microphone over to you so you can ask the question yourself. So in that spirit, we are going to kick it off with Jessica Wolf at table 43.
Hi, I work with the Forte Institute, running client services, but I stand with Natalie English on the issue of needing the Cape Fear Bridge. Are we good? The Cape Fear Memorial Bridge rebuilt. So this goes out to William Buster. Welcome to Wilmington. We're happy to have you here. Does that fall under the purview of the endowment, or can it?
What is it? What's the? I didn't hear.
Our bridge. We need a new bridge.
Yeah.
So there's this bridge downtown.
No. I have to be honest with you. But I personally can help.
Well, maybe it would be helpful then, William, if you want to explain, like, what are the 5 focus areas that were outlined in the agreement?
Yeah. So the areas of interest are education, and when we say education, we're talking about primary, secondary, and post-secondary. Public safety, and when I talk about public safety, we're really going to start to deal with youth development, youth engagement, health. Thank you. Health, and we're talking about health equity and public health overall. Then community development. Within community development, you can have everything from community economic development to infrastructure to housing would be under that as well. So those are the primary areas. But like I said before a little earlier, we don't know what we're going to do about those things yet. And so that's why it's going to be important for us to have the conversations with the community so we can better understand what about those things are the problems. Because that came from you all. Those areas came from listening. Now it's time for us to say, okay, so what about those things should we be improving?
I have no doubt someone will try to make the argument that the bridge falls under
I
community
know.
development.
Look, I've heard it all. And you will make a compelling argument, and I'll still say no.
Next question is from Stephen Smith, Table 49.
Good morning. Shelburne, my question was directed to you, but I think you pretty much answered it in regards to the growing area and how Novant's intent was as far as keeping the quality going and continuing to be the top notch that it is in New Hanover Regional. So I'm going to take this opportunity to say, while I had a son that was in New Hanover, and he spent 30 days in the surgical trauma intensive care unit, and my family and I couldn't be more appreciative for the care and consideration that we received at New Hanover. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank your organization for that, and I appreciate you answering my question before I answered it. So.
Thank you.
Next question is from Natalie English at table 10.
So, William, this one's for you. Imagine that. Everybody's anxious. And I was not planning to ask a question about the bridge. I'm good. I'm going to find the money for my bridge. My question to you is, you talked about, a $100,000 budgeted organization not really being able to spend $1 million off the bat, right? Does the endowment have any plans for investing time, talent, and treasure into helping our not-for-profit organizations in this community who are doing phenomenal work be able to really make it to that next level and help you spend that money?
Yes, so I liken it to anyone who's in private business. You know, R&D is one of the most important things that you can do. In nonprofits, and oftentimes nonprofits don't get the luxury of having resources that are dedicated to building their capacity and strengthening their ability to be innovative and collaborative. We're going to improve that opportunity for nonprofits to get those resources that it's hard to get. It's hard for nonprofits to get dollars to help them do strategic planning. It's hard for nonprofits to get dollars that help them think more intentionally about what they're going to be trying to do and change over the next 5 years or so. And so that's going to be absolutely necessary for us to invest in those things.
John Grinnell from table 34.
I'm John Grinnell. I'm the CEO of Grinnell Leadership. I have a question for all three of you. As you mentioned earlier, it's going to take the people in this room, a larger community, to help you all reach your vision. Is that a fair statement? So what are you looking for? What do you all look for business partners to help you with your success and your endeavors, which helps all of us? That's for all three of you.
Jeff, do you want to start?
Well, information and understanding, and understanding all the resources we have to be able to put forward the best case for air service growth, business park growth. I think that's where we all of the public and private sector stakeholders here in the room working together to grow as a community.
I say the unit of change is relationships. And so what I look for, change can't happen any faster than the speed of relationships. And so I'll look for opportunities to listen to folks who have connections, no matter how small or how big. I need people who know how to make things happen. I need people who know the people who are actually doing the good work. And so getting access to your networks and to your relationships are going to be critical for us to be successful.
And I'd say for healthcare, it's information and how can we better partner together. I mean, our focus is to have healthy communities, and how can we help you have healthy team members and employees, and what programs can we bring to you around wellness, well-being, screenings to make sure that they're healthy. We just need you reaching out with that information.
We have an audience. Excuse me. We have an audience question, but it didn't have a name or a table, so I will go ahead and field it for you, Jeff. It's about the airport. How do airlines make decisions to add flights or locate here?
Yeah, we have, Chicago's come back seasonally. Boston was added, and Newark was just added, and also a lot of upgauge in service, where a lot of our peer groups are seeing declines in service. Domestically, the market's still down 20% over pre-pandemic levels, and international's down 35%. Wilmington's is faring much better than that, looking forward at seat counts, and that has a lot to do, I think, with the confidence that the three carriers there have in terms of how profitable Wilmington is for them. And that's thanks to all of you and the users and the people that have relocated here using that service continually through what traditionally has been a business market. And we're definitely seeing that change. It's becoming more leisure focused. It's becoming more friends and family, people, second home market. So I'm very optimistic about the future.
Okay, and we have a question from Vance Williams at table 38.
This question is for Mr. Buster, William Buster. What innovative, just if you could name three, what innovative ideas do you have concerning transparency and community connectivity?
So for me, an innovation around transparency is really saying what we're doing as many different ways as we can. So using social networking, using our website, using public conversations, utilizing going into organizations and having joint conversations. So transparency is really us kind of both listening and telling you what we'll be up to, what we'll be doing. And so I'll be very intentional about saying what we're up to. We're going to establish, hopefully we'll establish a quarterly newsletter, so we're telling people what's happening inside the endowment. We'll be having information sessions around the grant-making strategy, so we're not just going to be passive in saying apply. We're actually going to have conversations about how do you apply and when to apply and what to apply for. So we'll be intentional about those things. I think what's innovative is that philanthropy oftentimes doesn't do those kinds of things. And so being a place-based philanthropy, being a part of this community, we'll have the opportunity to do that.
Thank you.
This one also came in without a table name, so I will just read it for Shelburne. So I'll just read it verbatim. As charitable as it is that Novant does not charge a family with an income under $83,000, who does pay their bill?
We do. I mean, it comes off of our bottom line. We write it off.
The health system. One more other quick one that didn't come with a name was for William, how do people express interest in serving on the Community Advisory Council? And maybe if you want to share what that council is.
Yeah, so the Community Advisory Council is going to be an entity by which we will be populated by community members from varying backgrounds. We're establishing those criteria now because we hope to launch that in the next several weeks. And so what the purpose of that will be is to inform us, to help us understand what's happening in our community, to help us gain access to information that we otherwise probably couldn't have access to. The way in which you will be able to apply will be on our website, and we've not launched that, but when we put it on our website, you'll see both the criteria, the deadlines, the meeting schedules, all of those things will be placed on our website when we're ready to launch.
And next question, and these are great questions, by the way. I like this crowdsourcing the interviews. We should just do this every day. But the next question comes from table 44 with Eileen Stevens.
Hi, I'm with Coil Solar that builds mobile solar power generators. My question is for William. So I'm very passionate about, Wilmington has a great tourism-focused industry, but I believe in building an innovation ecosystem. And in order to do that, we need to attract startups and top-tier companies to the area. In order to do that, I think we need to be able to educate the children of the leaders and the staff of those companies. And so what role can the nonprofit sector play in raising the floor of our public schools in our area? Thank you.
Thank you. I think one of the most important things that the nonprofit sector can do is be partners with the school system. Children don't live in schools, they live in neighborhoods, right? But they spend most of their time at school. And so their lives are centered around what comes out of the school system. And so having the nonprofit sector being the backbone of the support, because there's nothing more important than what happens after school for young people. And so what happens after school, the development opportunities, the kind of homework supports, the engagement, the leadership development, those kinds of things help enhance what happens between the hours that the young people are in school. And so I view our role as helping those nonprofits to be more intentional about being more engaged with young people. And I'll say this, that's really important, and you'll hear me say this from now until the end of time. Having the opportunity to listen specifically to young people is going to be critical. If you're not informed by your constituency, then you're not actually doing the work of your constituency. Young people are a constituency. They have a voice. They have an innovative voice. I love listening to young people. They're going to tell you something that you never thought of. And so having a way in which we as a community are listening to young people is going to be something that I'm looking forward to helping us to invest in.
Okay, next question is June Baker at table 6.
Thank you. Shelburne, you've answered most of my questions. However, I would like you to address the shortage of physicians in our area, primarily the primary care physicians, whether they be family practice or internal medicine. Folks are having to wait 3 and 4 months to get in to see a new physician in some areas. And how can we address that, please?
So we're addressing that hopefully with recruitment, but also the biggest piece of that is our relationship with UNC and the School of Medicine and the residency program. And we've committed to grow that program year over year. We expanded that this year. We're looking at some additional residencies that don't come here now. One is behavioral health psychiatry residency that we're evaluating. It's a big need as well. So we're hoping that is going to be our pipeline for future physicians. They'll come here, do their residency, fall in love with Wilmington and Southeast, and stay here when they're done with their residency. But at the same time, we've got to recruit others.
And Jeff, we have another one about the airport without a name here, but how much, let me see, make sure I phrase this right. How much land does ILM have for development?
Well, in the business park, there's about 150 acres of it, and about half of that is available for future development. The air side, I'm not sure what it is in terms of acreage available for development, but there's the one side of the airfield with the FBO. We just had a new FBO come in, a second FBO. So that side of the airfield's getting built up. There is some room for some cargo expansion. And there's an entire area, about 10 acres on the south side of the field that's available for future airside related development for an MRO, aircraft manufacturing facility like that. So there's lots of room to grow at ILM. There's some space for additional private hangars, corporate hangars. We're exploring that now with the FAA and our engineering team. So there's a lot of room for growth outside of the traditional air service growth, which we're set up for the long term. I think there's some road improvements and things like that we're going to be looking at coming down the line over the course of the next several years to the access road and loop road, parking. But all of those things are opportunities for the airport in the future.
Great, thanks. And thank you all for your questions too for our panel. Before we run out of time, and before I lose my voice up here, I just want to end us on a question for everyone. We can start with Shelburne, come down this way. But what's one takeaway that you'd like people to leave with?
Just know that we're committed to providing high quality and safe health care here for Southeast North Carolina. And we're going to continue to grow services to meet the needs here in the community, and we look forward to working with all of you to do that.
Change is a contact sport, and so you got to get involved to be a part of the change. And so patience and working together is going to be absolutely important to create the change that we want.
Air service development, I know, is important to this entire community here. It will be a focus of our team going forward. Anything you can do to help us, we appreciate that. A lot of you are already working with our team on it. But again, same concept, patience. It's going to take some time, but there's a strong future for the air service market out of Wilmington. And continue to check Wilmington first. And thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing all that with us today. If we have a round of applause for our panelists. And thank all of you for coming out this morning. I hope you gained some insights on some of these new leaders and new positions and those who are in those roles. All of you I know are avid fans of the Wilmington Biz Talk podcast and weekly show, so you would have known that we have I've talked with all of these gentlemen in recent months on those topics as well. So remember, that's every Thursday if you want to be on the super in the know, but it's nice to do this in person and hear from you all directly as well. Thank you everyone for joining, and we will have updates on this and other news of the day on our website and newsletter this afternoon. Have a great afternoon.